Welcome, everyone. My name is Solly Thomas. I'm an executive coach here at the Partnership for Public Service. The Partnership is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with the mission of building a better government and a strong democracy. I'm delighted to moderate a conversation today on how the career civil service can navigate the current presidential transition and lead through change. Before we begin our discussion, I want to advise our listeners that the Partnership's Center for Presidential Transition provides a one-stop shop of resources on how to navigate the transition. You can find this at ourpublicservice.org. That's ourpublicservice.org. We encourage you to take advantage of this valuable resource. There are approximately 75 days between Election Day and Inauguration Day, and it is our career civil service that will serve as a source of continuity and stewardship of the public trust in the days, weeks, and months ahead. While there are no easy ways to navigate and lead change, the American public does benefit from having experienced career public servants who have navigated previous transitions and change, and who can offer a playbook of sorts for today's federal workforce during this transitional change. We are joined today by a distinguished panel of three former career public servants who, when combined, possess over a century of federal government experience. Our first panelist is Angie Bailey, who serves as the Chief Human Capital Officer at the Department of Homeland Security from 2016 to 2022. Angie also served as the former Chief Operating Officer at the Office of Personnel Management and Director of Human Resources for the Defense Contract Management Agency. Angie began her career at the Social Security Administration. Our second panelist is Reggie Wells. Reggie was previously the Chief Human Capital Officer and Chief Diversity Officer at the Social Security Administration, where he also held other senior leadership positions. In addition to his long career at the Social Security Administration, Reggie served at the Administration for Children at Health and Human Services and the District of Columbia's Department of Human Services. And our third panelist is Renee Wynn, who previously served as the Chief Information Officer at NASA, and before that, the Deputy CIO. Before joining NASA, Renee spent 25 years at the Environmental Protection Agency, where her leadership positions included Acting Assistant Administrator for the Office of Environmental Information and Chief Information Officer. Like my colleagues here today on the panel, I too am a retired SES, having held senior executive positions at the Office of Personnel Management, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, and the U.S. International Trade Commission. We have no shortage of topics to cover today, so let's get started with our discussion. Our first topic involves the notion of supporting the public servants through these significant changes. So Angie, I'll start with you on the question, then we'll go to Reggie and Renee. Political transitions, like any other significant changes, can be stressful for a lot of people. What advice can you give to public servants to better manage this stress and care for themselves during this time of change?
Thank you for the question, Solly, and also thank you and the partnership for this opportunity to speak today. I think that there's two things to look at here, both professionally and personal. And so within the professional environment, I think it's really important that as we're dealing with these different transitions, and honestly, a presidential transition is just one of many transitions that we go through over time. But I think it's important to keep a sense of humor, right? And to be able to kind of find some levity within everything that's going on, because otherwise sometimes it feels like it can be quite overwhelming because you're not sure, right, of the direction in which things are going to go. And so I do find that focusing in on the work that we have at hand, at the great work that's being done and will continue to be done, and then keeping ourselves is again as focused as possible on that. And then personally, I think as you're trying to go through through a transition or through really any kind of change, is that you got to kind of take time to take care of yourself, whether that's going for a walk or it's going to the gym or meditating or heck, even heaven forbid, having a drink. I mean, sometimes you just got to figure out a way to like relax a little bit, take a deep breath, because you're going to get through this. We always do. I spent 40 years in the federal government. We always get through a transition, right? And some of them are more painful than others, but we always get through them. And so I think just stepping back and kind of staying focused on the big picture is oftentimes what really helps us, transition through many of these changes.
Good advice, Angie. Thank you. Reggie, your thoughts on this?
Well, I too want to thank the partnership and you, Sally, for bringing us together this way. I think we can offer certainly some of our experiences dealing with transition. I like Angie's advice about taking the drink. I think that's a pretty good one. I was thinking more along the lines of the advice you get whenever you board a flight and the flight attendant says, in case of decompression in the cabin, be sure to take care of yourself first, make sure you're in a position to help others. And I think that really does come to bear in dealing with transitions. I typically think of transitions like a lot of other significant change through the prism of that acronym, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And you really have to be on top of your game because, as Angie alluded to, you don't know exactly what's coming. But you do know that you are being expected to be the anchor in the storm, if there is a storm, and you're expected to provide whatever insights will help your team perform well and allow incoming political appointees and other staff to basically hit the ground running to the extent that they can. We all know that there's a slight difference in the time horizon for career civil servants and political appointees. And your job in part is to make those two things come together as much as you're capable of.
Cool. Well, thanks, Reg. Thanks for that advice. And Renee, your thoughts on this topic of how public servants can better manage the stress and care for themselves.
So the first thing I want to do is emphasize the importance of self-care. And it's just true all of the time. Having come from the IT world, we had big changes a lot, not only for my team, but I did it to the 65,000 people at NASA. So just relax and take care of yourself. And I think I would add to this, it's also a matter of preparedness. Just like my colleagues, I went through numerous transitions, both political as well as just boss changes who would take things in different directions. And so I would say there's a preparedness. Set your mindset is that you are there to teach, that you are there to ask questions, you are there to listen, and just keep your mindset on those three things. And remember too, when you took your oath to the Constitution, and you've made a commitment to the mission of your agency. So those should be foundational core things that just ground you and then help you lead yourself towards the appropriate self-care, whatever that is. And then again, these are humans that are coming in. There are humans that are leaving at this point in time as well. And so just be prepared. Teach, ask questions, listen, and keep your mindset about your mission.
Thanks, Renee, and thanks to the three of you. And one of the things that I've observed, and really I stress to individuals in my classroom settings and elsewhere is you're not alone. That there are others around you, both your leaders and your peers, that can talk to you to remove maybe some of the fear of the unknown, which really leads to the second question. And Reggie, we'll start with you. And that is, as leaders and even our peers, what are some ways that we can support career public servants during this time of change?
Well, thanks for that question, Sally. I think that's a major issue that we all have to grapple with at times of change. And your point about the fact that you're not in this together is really appropriate. We all have teams of people that we belong to. Many of us have taken the time to cultivate networks where folks can provide guidance and sometimes wisdom that we may be lacking in a particular situation. There's something extremely powerful in the ability of public servants to weather the storm, be that anchor in the storm, and to make sure that they are thinking through the kinds of things that allow people to prevail even under stressful situations. So I think that public servants come to this work for maybe a variety of reasons, but I've always found there to be a pretty constant. I wanted to make things better than I found them. I wanted to make a difference. And I think you have to assume positive intent for people who are signing on to that work, whether they be career or political. And so it's important for us as careerists to understand we're not there by happenstance. We signed on to this for a particular reason. And you have to keep those things in front of you as you move through the changes that are descending.
Cool. Thanks, Reg. Thanks for that advice. Renee, your thoughts on this topic of how we can support career public servants during this time of significant change?
Yes, absolutely. So my additions to this one are, first and foremost, remember, everyone is having a different experience. You may have worked for somebody with a really long time and you have a lot of common interests, but the way they are feeling and seeing a transition, no matter what the transition is, may actually be very different. So be cognizant that what your experience is going to be different than somebody else, which then leads to the importance of, if you're a manager and an executive, you need to communicate. You have got to have messages you want to share with people, because this transition has phases. All change and transitions have phases to it. So just be prepared to evolve your message and share and communicate. And in that communication, it isn't one way, it is two-way. So also be prepared to listen. And if you have a lot of managers reporting to you, you need to set the expectation that you want them to do the same thing. Because many people won't speak up in a large group, but speaking in a small group and listening to what people have to say and engaging people and having people help each other, right? And so just acknowledge it's a change and get ready for it and be prepared to communicate and listen. And my final thing is, remember to be vulnerable. At some point, so I was an executive, at some point I transitioned in as a GS 12 and 14, there was a transition going on. I had a very different view and a very different mindset than it was when I was going through my 8th and 9th transition as an executive. So open yourselves up and try to recall when your first couple of transitions happened and how you might have felt, and you share your personal strategies, and then tell people how your transition anxiety or how you've handled transition has changed over the years of being in the United States government.
Good advice as always. Angie, your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think Renee really brings up some good points, and I will say this, I want to foot stomp something else that you said, Renee, and that has to do with the fact that we take an oath to the Constitution of the United States. And I do think that is important. I remember during almost every transition, I would take the time to remind the staff of that when it comes to the politics, and that's the big P politics and stuff, that as executives, especially as executives, I think we have an obligation to remain agnostic, right? It cannot be that we let our emotions with regard to whatever's going on interfere or even flow down to our workforce. Because the truth of the matter is that most of the federal workforce is not in Washington, D.C. So they're not, I mean, if you're at Social Security and you're working on a lump sum death payment, or you're a park ranger at Shenandoah National Forest or at, Yosemite, these transitions are not the same as what they are in DC, especially for folks that are in policy positions and that they're closer to the flagpole, as we like to say. So I think it is really important that we remember the audience in which we're speaking to as executives, where our workforce is within this transition, whether or not they're out in the field, so to speak, or they're right here really close to everything that is going on within this town within DC. And so I think that that's just one of the things that makes it really kind of again, important for us as leaders is that we go into this with as open mind as we possibly can, that we help rally our folks around the common mission of these agencies and the institutions in which they signed up to serve, because that's what's really important. It's all about getting the work done on behalf of the American public. And most of our jobs don't change regardless of who's in office, regardless of the administration. Most of our jobs within the federal government are not going to have these wild swings. Will there be some? Yes, of course there is, but the vast majority will not go that way. And this goes with the whole fear-mongering thing too. I think it's incumbent upon us, no matter who wins, that we take the time to, like I had said earlier, step back, really kind of examine these things, stay focused on the mission at hand, because that's what I think helps employees and everyone at large kind of feel like what they're doing is still really important, regardless of the change or of the administration.
Cool. Thank you, Angie. Thank you for that advice. And before we move on to the next one, I mean, my experience in any kind of change situation is the number one fear, the number one concern is the fear of the unknown. So some advice I like to give to individuals who are new at this is to reach out. I mean, it kind of works both ways, to reach out to individuals that have been through these types of changes to get a better handle and get more information, as you all said, better communication and better listening. And the reverse, those individuals that actually have been through that, to reach out to the individuals that are relatively new, and again, share their thoughts and share their advice, much of which you heard from Reggie, Renee, and Angie.